y'all, it's Ilana and welcome back to my channel. So this video is about how to live in San Francisco on a budget. If you're new to my channel, hi, welcome. I post content about what it's like to navigate life and dating in San Francisco. So if you're thinking about moving to San Francisco, or maybe you live in San Francisco, or maybe you're just single navigating the dating world, whatever the case may be, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below because I think you'll really like it here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. That I'm making this video because I am personally not the best with my money, especially after experiencing 3 job losses in 1 year. But it's taught me how to, again, live on a budget. But when I did have jobs, I definitely wasn't as mindful with my money. But I want to say within my first year of living here, where I had a very low paying job, this is what I did to somewhat comfortably live in San Francisco with my low-paying job and what I did, in hopes that it helps you too. So just hear me out because it did work for me once upon a time. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing that you need to know about when it comes to living on a budget in San Francisco is being realistic with your rent. So I've talked about this so many times about things you need to know when it comes to moving to San Francisco, how rent is very expensive. It is going to be the biggest bulk of your expenses while living here. So you need to be very realistic with your rent situation, taking a look at what your salary or monthly income is alike and see what is best for you to be spending money on an apartment or a house if you are lucky enough to make that much money to have a house. I personally recommend that you pay 20 to 25% of your yearly income, and that will kind of determine what will be best for you when it comes to spending money on rent. I have recommended this really awesome calculator that can determine how much you should be spending, but just keep in mind it doesn't factor in any taxes or debt that you may have. But if you want to know how much money is possibly going out of your paycheck every single paycheck, I will link a really great resource by Paycheck City that can determine how much taxes are coming out of your paycheck every single paycheck that you get, and that will give you a good idea of what your net income is so you can spend that on rent and any other expenses that you may have. It is so important that you get a good understanding of how much you are making and what you can actually afford, because just because you're making $100K doesn't mean you should spend $3,000 on an apartment. It's a lot of money, and just remember that you still get a lot of taxes taken out. You may have debt. So be very realistic with what your expenses are already like so you can, again, still live comfortably. So that's the obvious one that I wanted to bring up, but some people just still kind of forget about being realistic with their budget when it comes to a place to live. Oh, and another thing that I want to note is one thing that I did to help me with budgeting rent out for every month is I would take half of my rent and put it into savings, and then when I got the other paycheck, I would take another half of what my rent is and then put into savings. So then when I was ready to pay my rent on the first, I had that money ready to go, and everything else that was left over was for bills, credit card debt, or any other expenses that I had. So that's a great way to kind of budget out your rent money so you're not tempted to overspend it. So that was something that I did within my first year, especially when I was living in Daly City. And that's how I did it, and it worked really well for me. Now I don't do that because my payrolls from other jobs work differently than my first job. That's what I did at the previous time. But it could be a great way to help you know that you have that money put away and making you feel a little bit more comfortable so you can still pay your rent on time. And then again, some people do pay their rent with one paycheck and they use that for it to go to rent. It's up to you. I now do the second option because I make a little bit more money with paychecks. But when I wasn't making a lot of money, I did it the split way, which worked really well for me. So just see what works best for you and how much you're making with every single paycheck, and that will really help you out. Okay, let's go to the next thing. So one thing that makes it really hard when it comes to budgeting is debt. If you have debt, this can make it a little bit harder for you to live on a budget, but hear me out. So I have a credit card, and I try to make the minimum payment if I don't have a lot of money left over for that month. The most important thing is that you should be meeting at least your minimum every single month so you can at least still have money left over for other expenses. But if you are making a little bit more, I really do recommend paying more than your minimum so you have more money left over, and that way it helps you get your debt paid off faster. Assuming that once you get your debt paid off, you have more money to spend on other things. Definitely recommend, if you are making a lower salary, then pay the minimum payment. But if you are making a little bit more, try paying a little bit more and getting yourself more out of debt. So that way, the closer you are out of debt, the more money that you can spend to live comfortably. The third biggest way when it comes to budgeting money, and I've mentioned this in my Everything You Need to Know Before Moving to San Francisco video, and that is to ditch your car. I promise you, if you live in San Francisco, you really do not need a car. I think it's absolutely a waste of money, and it's a waste of space. Parking is already really tough in the city, so why go through the hassle and trying to spend hours and hours trying to find a parking spot around your house, or paying money for a parking garage or a parking spot wherever you're living? It's just a lot of money that you honestly don't need to be spending. Sell your car and get rid of it. You really don't need it. Plus, it will cut down the cost of gas, car insurance, and any upkeep and maintenance that your car may need. That is already hundreds and maybe even thousands of dollars that you're spending per year, because cars are expensive. So I really recommend you ditch the car, because I swear you absolutely do not need a car here. Seriously. Please trust me on this one, because it's going to save you so much money. Another thing that I want to note when it comes to transportation is take advantage of the public transportation system. San Francisco has pretty good public transportation, and it's at a cheaper cost than it normally would be compared to New York City. So I recommend you get a Clipper card. It's about $3 to get, and then you can load as much money on it as you want to pay for public transportation fare. If public transportation isn't your thing, then maybe I suggest you get a bike. Bikes usually cost around, what, $200? I don't know, I don't have a bike. That will also save you a lot of money, and you don't even have to worry about spending money on public transportation if you prefer to ride a bike everywhere and get a lot of exercise. That's another great method of saving money when it comes to transportation. And if you are going to take Ubers, I highly recommend that you really cut down on your Uber usage. So I would say taking Ubers no more than 3 times a week. I really recommend using public transportation as much as you can to get to wherever you need to go. If the commute is a little bit too long for you, so let's say you're going from the Sunset all the way to Soma, and public transportation is not going to be reliable for you that day or whatever it is, then maybe you could say, okay, I'll take an Uber. But just be mindful of how many times you're making that kind of commute, and it will really help you cut back down. Ever since the pandemic hit, Uber Pool is no longer a thing right now, so UberX is kind of the biggest thing that everyone's relying on at the moment, and it's a lot more expensive than what Uber Pool was. Keep that in mind when it comes to your transportation costs, because not taking Ubers will really save you a lot of money, or just minimizing your Uber rides as much as possible. That will really help you. Groceries. Let's talk about it. There are 2 options that I highly recommend that you shop from to save money on groceries. Trader Joe's is the cheapest national grocery store in San Francisco. I really recommend that you avoid going to Safeway, Sprouts, and then Whole Foods. Y'all know how much I love Whole Foods. Those places are very, very expensive. And what I like about Trader Joe's is that the prices do not change based off your location. So at Safeway, eggs could cost you $3, whereas Trader Joe's, it could cost you $1.69. That's a big difference right there. Milk is a lot cheaper there. Ice cream, vegetables, it's a lot cheaper than it is at a regular grocery store. Another great way to save money on groceries, I also recommend the Asian grocery stores. They always sell produce at a cheaper cost, maybe even sometimes cheaper than Trader Joe's. Also, exploring farmers markets where you can get your food fresh. They tend to be on the cheaper side. That's what I recommend when it comes to buying groceries. And when it comes to food in general, I would say cap your eating out to no more than 2 times per week, because eating out is very expensive. So I recommend eating out maybe once or twice a week and no more than that, and really try to cook all of your meals at home. I know that was a big challenge for me, especially because I hate cooking. But ever since this pandemic has started, I rarely spend money out on food anymore, thanks to prep, of course, but at the same time, I still do like to just save money and not spend a fortune on all the takeout and Uber Eats options, because it's too expensive. Okay, so let's talk about entertainment and social life. From time to time, you may want to go to bars. of course, when we're not in a global pandemic, or you may want to go to concerts, anything that is going to cost money for entertainment purposes. This is what I recommend for you. It's really important that you see how much money you have left over after groceries, bills, rent, debt payments, stuff like that, and then be realistic with how much you can spend going out for your social life. So if you want to go to a bar, I highly recommend that you go during happy hour where drinks are cheaper, or just picking something that is just cheap in general. I know that's easier said than done because drinks in San Francisco tend to be very expensive, but I really recommend going out no more than once or two times per week because that is a very expensive thing to do. And I'm going to get into the next thing where it talks about social life because there are so many free things to do in this city. But it's really important that you are just realistic with your budgeting. Maybe buy no more than 2 drinks per night because, again, it's a lot of money that you're racking up and that you're spending. Also, are you into working out? Gyms cost money, so it's really important that you find a gym that fits your budget. I personally recommend City Sport or 24 Hour Fitness as they are some of the cheapest gyms in San Francisco. Most gym memberships range from $70 to $100 per month, which is a lot of money. And I know 24 Hour Fitness is about $41 per month. City Sport, if you pay the highest initiation fee, then you can pay $25 per month, which is what I did. And personally, I found the $125 initiation fee to be worth it because I'm saving a ton of money every month on a gym membership. Right now, my gym membership is paused, but again, when we're not in a global pandemic, it's just something else that you could think about as well. So I just mentioned about doing things for cheap and free in the city. San Francisco has so many cheap things to do. We have a ton of parks. We have the beach. We have a ton of hiking trails. There are so many things that you can do for free. And if you want me to do a whole video on free and cheap things to do in San Francisco, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up because that lets me know that you like my content and you want to see more of it. And I can totally make that video because that literally is a whole entire video in itself. Another great thing that I recommend is taking advantage of Groupons for certain activities that can help you save money. I use Groupon all of the time when it comes to doing fun activities around the city. One time for the 4th of July, I wanted to go sailing on the bay and I found a Groupon for $45 when something like that would normally cost $80. And I got 2 drinks with that $45 payment along with the admission to go on the boat. So I thought that was a really good deal in my opinion. So if there are certain activities that you want to do that do cost money, check to see if there's a Groupon for it because, oh my god, it will literally save you so much money and it's just going to be your best friend in general. And then another great way to live comfortably and cheap on a budget in San Francisco is to possibly have additional income. A lot of people in San Francisco do have side gigs or side hustles that they use to make extra money. OnlyFans is one of my options. I get a little bit money from my podcast as well. And then I know sometime next year, this channel will hit 1,000 subscribers and it will get monetized. So I'll make money through YouTube as well. So it's really important that you have additional income and don't just rely on your regular job because the pandemic has taught us that you are not financially comfortable. There's no such thing as financial security. So it is really important that you do have another source of income. It's very common here because it is very expensive. So that's another thing that you can consider doing. Do you have a hobby or a passion that you would love to monetize? Maybe you want to do some contract app work like driving for Uber or shopping for Instacart. Those are some options that you can do to help you get by and have more money while living in the city. So what do you guys think? Did you find any of these things helpful? If you live in San Francisco or another big expensive city, comment down below and let us know what you're doing to live comfortably for cheap/on a budget. I'd love to know what you're doing. And if you liked this video, again, make sure you do give it a thumbs up and I will see you in my next video. Bye.